Let's kick off with a question. Why do people buy vinyl records? When being asked, some people are capable of saying some utter rubbish trying to sound profound in this regard. Sometimes it's just funny, sometimes it's outright ridiculous. Me personally, I collect records for two, maybe three reasons. First, it's a simple nostalgia. I always loved listening to records and that hasn't changed. Putting a record on a platter and dropping the arm is just what I fancy to do, certainly more than playing a file from a PC. Second, I just want to own physical media. And third, records were mastered a lot better than other physical media. I'm not sure about the quality of records nowadays, but records were mastered with care, unlike for instance CDs. I'm sure you all have heard about loudness wars, I'll get to it later on. Getting a spanking new turntable means spending at least 300 quid on a reasonably good one. But £300 can get you an excellent vintage turntable. So the question is it better to get new or vintage? When choosing a turntable, there are practically just three criteria: sound quality, design, and how much lazy you are. Some people prefer one, some the other, and the best possible outcome is, of course, if you can combine all three. Design is exactly what it is, you either fancy our looks or not. By lazy, I mean the turntable can be either automatic or manual, I'll get to the difference later on. Now the sound quality. If we're looking for the top sound quality, we need to consider a couple of different features and options. About 90% of the turntable's sound quality comes from a cartridge. A cartridge is this device that's connected to the end of a tone arm. It reads information from a record through a cantilever. It's this bit of a cartridge that holds a tip made of either diamond or sapphire. The tip is also called needle or stylus. The diamond is harder, so the tip is more resistant to wear, but it's also much pricier. The tip is then dragged through a record groove that contains these ridges, which are the actual recorded sound. Going through the groove then creates vibrations that are transferred through a cantilever into a body of the cartridge, where are then converted into a very weak electrical signal. And this signal is of course the music we want to listen to, so it's the most important bit of the entire chain, and as such, it should be taken good care of. That being said, choosing a cartridge is far more important than choosing a turntable itself. Today there are basically four types of cartridges you can buy. The ones that are used most often are moving magnet and moving coil. Not so common are moving iron and ceramic cartridges. They all do the same thing, each of them a little bit differently though. Moving magnet looks like this. As the tip is running about the groove bouncing off the ridges, the cantilever moves and vibrates according to what the tip touches. At the other end of the cantilever is a permanent magnet which sits between these stationary coils, and as the cantilever moves, the magnet moves between the coils, thus moving magnet, and this exact movement creates the electrical signal we're after. Moving coil, on the other hand, is a sort of reverse mechanism. At the end of the cantilever is a coil, which is moving between stationary magnets, you can guess the rest. Moving iron is very similar to moving magnet, where instead of heavy, permanent magnet, light, temporary magnet is used, usually a hollow piece of iron. The stationary permanent magnet is there to induce magnetic field. This approach has two advantages: less mass that is better for more accurate tracking, similar to the MC card, and high output voltage similar to the MM card, so you don't need more complicated and expensive preamp. It's sort of best of both worlds. Ceramic cartridges are cheap and used in entry-level turntables. They use piezoelectric effect. The cantilever is touching the yoke that's connected to the ceramic bit. When the tip is running about the groove, the cantilever starts pushing the yoke, which flexes the ceramic bit, and that's how the voltage is produced. There are a couple of differences between these approaches. A magnet is heavier than a simple coil, so the cantilever in MM cartridges has harder time to move about in the groove, and it makes it more difficult to pick up higher frequencies. So, in theory, MC cartridges could pick up more detail, but they are also more expensive and more difficult to work with in terms of preamplification. Some say the MC cartridges are far superior in terms of sound quality, but are they really? What's far more important is the shape of a stylus. There are several shapes of styli you can find. In a cross-section view, spherical tip is a circle. They are simple and cheapest to produce. The circular, rather wide shape won't allow spherical tips to get deep inside the groove, and as such they don't track very well, and of course they can't retrieve all the information from the groove. On the flip side, most of the dust and crap is deep inside the groove, so with the spherical tips you'll be spared of most of the pops and clicks. As the name implies, and as you can see here, the shape is a squashed circle, which can get better into the walls, has better contact, thus tracks much better, and can retrieve more information than the spherical tip. Since it's got much better surface contact, it results in less wear for both the stylus itself and the record. Line contact tips are squashed even more. They can pick up even more information off of the groove wall, including dust and imperfections. And this is where the record cleaning is rather important. This tip carries the name of its creator, Norio Shibata from JVC. JVC patented the shape in 1973 and it's become iron standard since then. Shibata's shape allows more contact with the groove than even the line contact, and as such it can, again, retrieve more information. If you're wondering why nobody's made a tip similar to a cutting stylus that cuts the lacquer in the pressing factories, somebody actually has. Namiki in 1983 and called it Micro Ridge. The shape is almost the same as the styli that cut the lacquer, and thus it can retrieve pretty much anything out of the groove. If you worry not just about the sound quality but also the life of your record, Micro Ridge shape is the way to go. The problem with more sophisticated styli is that they need to be more painstakingly aligned to get the best out of them. Laser is a special type of needle. Well, it's not a needle obviously, but it behaves like one in this case. As far as I know, there's only one company that ventured into this territory, and that's ELP. They've made a couple of exorbitant priced turntables that I've never had an opportunity to play around with, nor I've never seen one with my own eyes, but I'd certainly want to. It would be most interesting. If I leave out the sound quality, it's got one unbeatable advantage over ordinary turntables. Nothing touches records during playback, which means no wear, so your records last pretty much forever. Another distinction between cartridges is how the tip is attached to a cantilever. It's either bonded or nude. Bonded tip is composed of a piece of metal that is glued to a cantilever and a small piece of diamond that is glued to this piece of metal. Nude tip, on the other hand, is a chunk of diamond glued directly to a cantilever. Bonded tip is using much less diamond, so it's cheaper. Nude, however, tracks more accurately due to its lower mass, which can theoretically result in a better sound. When a stylus gets damaged, broken or simply worn out, you may want to replace it. Ceramic or styli are quite often easy to replace. You can either replace just a cantilever or this bit the cantilever is attached to. Easy. With MC tips, however, not so much. They're usually firmly fixed to a cartridge and it's impossible to replace any part. There are two options though. You must either buy a new cartridge or let someone re-tip the cartridge with a new diamond tip. Both of these options are unfortunately almost always quite pricey. Tone arms got a couple of important functions or features. Holds a cartridge in place that makes sure the cartridge is properly aligned, takes care of proper tracking force, makes sure the tip is in the center of a groove and not leaning to one side or the other, and the last function is to lead the signal out of the turntable. The cartridge is connected to a head shell, usually using these wires. The head shell is then connected to a tone arm, usually with one of these connectors. You may also find a fixed head shell, such as this one used by this Nakamichi turntable. One advantage is that they tend to be more steady and rigid. The problem, however, is that you can't use every cartridge you can find with your turntable. Vast majority of cartridges will be alright, but you may find some that are impossible to install or calibrate. For optimal performance, tone arm needs to move as smooth as possible, horizontally, but also vertically. Every manufacturer has their own way of achieving this. After the cartridge is installed, you may proceed with the calibration. The calibration involves some weighing and some adjustment. To make sure the cart is not swiveled in the head shell, it needs to be properly aligned, usually using a protractor, which is a necessary tool to help you do that. You can either buy one or you can download and print out one of these. The alignment is a simple procedure, but take your time and don't do it sloppily. You need to make sure your cartridge is within these boundaries at two different places. Most turntables, except for the cheapest ones, can adjust a tracking force in some way or the other. With my turntables, it's done with this counterweight at the end of the tone arm, it's the most common way. Every cartridge needs a different tracking force for optimal performance. It's basically just how much pressure a tip applies to a surface of a record. It's measured in grams, and to be sure you've got it right, you can use one of these scales. First, you need to find a perfect balance where the arm is perfectly level. Then adjust the counterweight to a proper weight according to these markings. According to the manual, my cartridge, which is an MC cartridge, should be set between 1.2 and 1.8 grams. More tracking force should result in a better sound, but also in more wear. You can experiment with your cartridge if you can hear any difference. I've recorded the same track using 1.2 and then 1.8 grams. Have a listen if you can hear any difference. Ceramic cartridges usually need more tracking force. They can go up to 10 grams. They certainly wear down a record a tad more than MC or MM cartridges that require tracking force between 1 and 3 grams, but it's not like it's gonna cut it all in a record after one play. The anti-skating is a very important feature. Not all turntables have this feature, but they should. The anti-skating makes sure your tone arm won't push towards one side or the other. That would result in one channel playing louder, and if it were pushing too much, even skipping. Again, every turntable has its own way of doing that, and mine's got this. Based on the tracking force, I have to set the string to a proper groove. It's a little bit dodgy approach, but it works and looks cracking. The video is quite long already, so I'm gonna cut it short and split it into two parts. So cheers for now and see you in part 2.